Close your eyes for a moment. It is 5:30 in the morning. Below you, the Tagus River glitters like liquid gold in the first light of dawn. Then 5 more. The whole city is waking up. This is not a history lesson. This is not a list of dates and kings and oil paintings into photorealistic scenes. We are going to do something different. We are going to live a single day in Lisbon, the most powerful, the most beautiful, and the most contradictory city on earth in the year 1750. We will walk from its coldest, darkest dawn to its most dangerous midnight. And by the end of this day, you will understand something that no textbook can teach you, what it truly felt like to be alive in a city. One day, one city. Let us begin. Before Lisbon becomes noise, before it becomes empire, before it becomes chaos, there is this brief, quiet, impossible moment just before sunrise when the city holds its breath. The Tagus River below is still. The water is the color of dark iron, not yet touched by the sun. But if you look closely, you can already see the first shadows moving on its banks. These are not noblemen. These are not priests. These are the people the city cannot live without, and whose names history almost never recorded. The first to move in this city are the Gallegos. Immigrants from the Galicia region of Spain, they arrived in Lisbon with almost nothing. They were the city's muscle, the human infrastructure behind a city that had no running water in any of its homes. Every single drop of water that a wealthy merchant's family used to wash their face this morning, every barrel that a baker used to make your bread, every pot that a noble household would cook with today, all of it had to be physically carried up Lisbon's impossibly steep hills by these men. They carried wooden barrels on their backs, climbing the same cobblestone paths dozens of times each day. They were often looked down upon, treated as a lower caste, mocked for their accents. Yet if every single Gallego in Lisbon stopped working for just one day, this entire empire of gold and spice would grind to a halt before noon. It is sharp, musical, rhythmic, almost like a chant. These are the fishwives, the women who have been awake since 3 in the morning, down at the Ribeira market, buying the night's catch directly from the fishing boats. No support, and they walk with extraordinary grace through streets that would twist the ankles of most people. Their cry, "Olha o Peaks, Olha o Peaks fresco," echoes through the narrow alleys of the Alfama like a bell. And it is in this moment, watching these women walk with baskets of sardines on their heads through the pre-dawn light of the oldest neighborhood in Lisbon, that you understand something fundamental about this city. The Portuguese Empire that filled these streets with Brazilian gold, Indian pepper, and Chinese porcelain was built and sustained every single morning by people like this. People who never saw the inside of the Ribeira Palace. While Paris was still sleeping, Lisbon was already feeding the world. Come down the hill now. Follow the Varinas toward the river. Because what you are about to see at the Ribeira waterfront is something that no living person on earth today has ever witnessed. The forest of masts, that is what travelers called it. So many ships are anchored here that you could theoretically walk from one bank of the river to the other by stepping from deck to deck. English trading ships, Brazilian supply galleons still carrying the smell of jungle and gold dust, spice caravels from Goa with the unmistakable scent of pepper and cinnamon still clinging to their ropes, Swahili, all mixed together with the rough shouts of the stevedores unloading cargo in the gray morning light. To understand what you are seeing at these docks, you must understand the 5 streams of wealth that flow into this port every single morning. The first is gold from Brazil. Since the discovery of massive gold deposits in Minas Gerais in 1695, a literal river of wealth has been flowing across the Atlantic into this harbor. Nearly 1,000 tons of gold and millions of carats of diamonds arrived at these very docks in the decades leading up to this morning. Right now, on that galleon with the faded blue hull, men are carrying sealed chests under armed guard toward the lower floors of the Ribeira Palace. Those chests contain gold bars. The second stream is spices from the east, from Goa, from Malacca, from Timor, pepper, cinnamon, and cardamom that have made the fortunes of merchant families for generations. The third is silk and porcelain from China, flowing through the gateway of Macau, the delicate white gold that every aristocratic house in Paris and London desperately craves. The fourth is ivory and rare goods from Africa, funneled through Portugal's strategic ports in Angola and Mozambique. And the fifth stream, the one no one talks about openly, but that everyone here sees, is the enslaved human beings brought from West Africa. This is the dark foundation beneath the beauty of this city, and the story of 18th century Lisbon cannot be told honestly without acknowledging it. By 9 in the morning, the Ribeira is in full chaos, beautiful, deafening, overwhelming chaos. But the docks are not the only theater of power in this city. Come, there is somewhere else we need to be. Leave the river, climb away from the docks, push through the narrow alleys of the Baixa and emerge into the Rossio, the great public square at the heart of Lisbon, and the city changes completely. The Rossio is alive. A market has erupted across its uneven cobblestones, vendors selling vegetables, cloth, live chickens, leather shoes, and smuggled books. Children weave through the crowds. A blind musician plays the Portuguese guitar in a corner. The smell of roasting chestnuts mixes with horse dung and the faint sweet scent of incense drifting from the church doors. Towering over this square is the Carmo Convent, the most important Gothic church in Lisbon, whose height makes it a landmark visible from almost everywhere in the city. But here is the thing about Lisbon in 1750 that no tourist painting ever shows you. While the Enlightenment was sweeping through the coffee houses of Paris, while Voltaire was writing, while Rousseau was arguing, Lisbon was still burning people at the stake in this very square. The Portuguese Inquisition, established in 1536, is still very much alive and operational. The primary targets are the new Christians, Jews who had been forcibly converted to Christianity generations ago, but were still suspected of secretly practicing their original faith. If accused, they are brought to this square in yellow tunics marked with red crosses, the San Benito, and marched in a grand, public procession called the Auto da Fe before their sentence is carried out. The king himself sometimes attended. The nobility considered it entertainment. Somewhere inside the Carmo library right now, a scholar is secretly reading a French book that was smuggled into Lisbon inside a barrel of olive oil. He reads quickly. He memorizes what he can. Then he hides the book beneath a loose stone in the floor. Outside, in the sunny Rossio, a foreign merchant from Amsterdam and a local priest are arguing in low, careful voices. "Your city has more gold than any city in the world," the merchant says, "and yet you fear a book." The priest says nothing, but his eyes dart toward the headquarters of the Inquisition at the far end of the square. This is the contradiction at the heart of 18th century Lisbon, one of the most cosmopolitan ports on the planet. and simultaneously one of the most intellectually repressive places in Europe. In the early afternoon, Lisbon splits in two. Not geographically, but in this suspended hour after midday, the difference between the two Lisbons becomes impossible to ignore. In the grand houses of the Bairro Alto, a wealthy merchant's family is sitting down to a lunch that itself tells the story of the Portuguese Empire. Brazilian chocolate, rice spiced with cardamom from Goa, a meat dish prepared with pepper from Malacca, that has traveled 15,000 kilometers to reach this plate. The drawing room walls are covered in hand-painted azulejo tiles. Two foreign diplomats are taking tea in the best room of the house, talking carefully about the Roteiros, Portugal's secret navigation charts, the 18th century equivalent of nuclear codes. The nobleman smiles. He offers more chocolate. He says nothing useful. At this exact same moment, at the bottom of this same hill, at this exact same moment, in the medieval labyrinth of the Alfama, a fisherman's family is eating their afternoon meal. It is sardines, the same sardines the Varinas were crying out at dawn. There is stale bread, perhaps some olives, a thin soup. The house is essentially one dark room. No windows facing the street, because windows mean taxes. The children eat quickly because there is no point in making a meal last when there is not enough of it. Outside, the children of the Alfama are playing in the alley, a game involving a stone and a chalk square on the cobblestones, the same game their grandparents played in the same alley. The fisherman's wife picks up an empty clay pot and begins the walk to the public fountain, 3 streets away and uphill, the same walk she has made every single day of her adult life. In this city, the distance between a king's table and a fisherman's floor was not miles. It was just one hill. The afternoon sun begins its descent toward the Atlantic, and Lisbon undergoes its most beautiful transformation. The light here in the late afternoon is different from anywhere else in Europe, a particular golden quality, refracted off the Tagus, that makes the white plastered walls glow like heated metal and turns the river itself into something almost supernatural. The Portuguese have a word for the feeling this light produces. Saudade, longing, a beautiful melancholy. And you understand it best in this hour. At the Ribeira Palace, King João V is reviewing correspondence in his private library, a room containing 70,000 volumes, including maps so strategically sensitive that foreign agents have paid fortunes trying to obtain them. He used Brazilian gold to pay the Pope himself for the title of Most Faithful King. He commissioned the world's most advanced aqueduct system. He is, by any reasonable measure, one of the most powerful men alive. And yet, sitting in his golden library this evening, he cannot shake a low, unspoken anxiety that even the greatest wealth cannot entirely silence. Down at the Belém Tower, a small crowd has gathered. They are not tourists. There are no tourists in Lisbon in 1750. They are families, wives, mothers, children, aging fathers. They are watching a ship come in from the west. The Belém Tower was the last thing every Portuguese sailor saw when he left Lisbon on a voyage that might last 3 years. It is the first thing he sees coming home. For the families standing on the bank right now, this particular ship has been gone for 2 years and 8 months. But this one comes. And as the sails catch the last golden light of the afternoon, and a familiar figure appears at the bow, older, thinner, but unmistakably alive, a woman in the crowd begins to run toward the water's edge. For this one sailor, this evening is everything. For thousands of others who never returned, this same sunset on this same river was the last thing their families ever imagined. From somewhere in the Bairro Alto, carried down on the evening wind, come the first notes of a Portuguese guitar. A sound is melancholic and beautiful in equal measure. It is the sound of a city processing its own contradictions. It is the sound that will, in years to come, become known to the world as Fado. After dark, Lisbon becomes a different city entirely. There is no street lighting. The only illumination comes from oil lamps hung outside wealthier houses and from the candles burning in church windows. In the narrow alleys of the Alfama, it is so dark that you move by memory and by the sound of your own footsteps. And then, without warning, from a window somewhere above you comes the cry, "Agua vai," water goes, water goes. This is your only warning that the contents of a chamber pot are about to be emptied onto the street from 3 floors above. It is not a joke. It is not an exaggeration. It is the sanitation system of 18th century Lisbon. The stench of this city in summer was legendary among travelers. The Tagus River, the same magnificent river that carries gold and spice and the dreams of an empire, also serves as the city's primary drain. In the Bairro Alto, the taverns are filling up. Here, in the candle-lit rooms, you find the most extraordinary mix of humanity in any city in the world. Wealthy merchants and their secretaries, sailors just off ships from 4 different continents, minor nobility gambling with money they do not have, spies working for 3 different governments, and in the back corner of the best tavern on the street, a group of musicians tuning their instruments. When the Fado singer opens her mouth and the first note fills the low-ceilinged room, every conversation stops. The song is about the sea. It is always about the sea in Lisbon, either the sea itself, or what the sea takes from you and does not return. Outside, the streets grow more dangerous with every passing hour. Crime is high. The city's enormous wealth creates enormous inequality, and enormous inequality creates men with knives and nothing to lose. But somewhere in the Alfama, in a small house with a single candle burning, the scholar sits over his table again. The French book is open in front of him. He knows the risk. He takes it anyway. And every candle burning tonight in every church, every tavern, every private library. No one who sees that flame this evening knows that in just 5 years, these same flames will consume everything. This was a perfect day in Lisbon. Beautiful, chaotic, powerful, deeply flawed. The fishwives cried their prices at dawn. The docks groaned under the weight of Brazilian gold. The Inquisition cast its shadow over the Rossio. A scholar read forbidden books by candlelight. A sailor came home. A Fado singer filled a dark tavern with music that made grown men cry. Every person who lived this day was living on borrowed time. On the morning of November 1st, 1755, All Saints' Day, almost the entire population of Lisbon was inside a church. The churches were packed to capacity. Thousands of candles were burning on the altars. The air was thick with incense. At 9:40 in the morning, the earth began to shake. This was not a small tremor. It was one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in European history, estimated between 8.5 and 9.0 on the Richter scale. The shaking lasted for nearly 6 minutes, an eternity during an earthquake. The Carmo Convent, whose bells marked your morning, its roof collapsed on thousands of worshippers. It still stands today, left deliberately in its ruined state as a memorial. When you stand inside it and look up through the open arches at the open sky, You are seeing exactly what the survivors saw in November 1755, the Ribeira Palace, where the king stored his 70,000 books. His secret maps, his paintings by Titian and Rubens, is completely gone. Not a single stone remains. The earthquake was followed by a tsunami, then by fires that burned for 5 days. When it was over, 85% of Lisbon's buildings were destroyed. Between 30,000 and 60,000 people were dead. Philosophers across Europe, Voltaire, Rousseau, debated in horror. How could a just God allow this to happen on a holy day to a devout city? The earthquake that destroyed Lisbon helped trigger the Age of Enlightenment, the era of reason over blind faith. The only neighborhood that largely survived was the Alfama, the oldest, poorest, most forgotten part of the city. The fishwives' neighborhood, the Gallegos' neighborhood. The place history almost never wrote about. It is still there today. And when you walk its streets, you are walking the same cobblestones where the Varinas cried their prices at dawn on a morning exactly like this one. Lisbon today is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. But when you walk through it now, if you know what to look for, you see the ghost of this day everywhere. In the Praça do Comércio, you walk over the ruins of the Ribeira Palace, the most powerful building in the Atlantic world, reduced to rubble in 6 minutes. In the Carmo Convent, you look up through open arches at the sky and understand the scale of what was lost. In the Alfama, you hear a Fado song drifting from an open window, and you recognize in its melody the same things the sailors and fishwives were feeling on that evening in 1750. The saudade, the aching longing for something that was beautiful and is now gone. These were not characters in a history book. These were people who woke up on an ordinary morning and lived an ordinary day, the same day we have lived together today. And they deserve to be remembered with the same detail and the same humanity that we give to kings and earthquakes and empires. Lisbon is a city that has seen the end of the world and decided to keep going. Greatness is never permanent, but the spirit of a city that survives everything. You have just lived one day in 1750 Lisbon. Tell us in the comments, which moment of this day would you most have wanted to witness? The first light at dawn in the Alfama, the chaos of the docks at 7 in the morning, the secret conversation in the Carmo library, or that last golden hour on the Tagus watching a sailor come home and tell us where we should go next. Should we spend a day in Ottoman Constantinople at the height of its power? Or walk the crowded bazaars of Mughal Delhi under Emperor Aurangzeb? The choice is yours. If this journey meant something to you, share it with someone who loves history.